Hi, everybody. Oh, no, we're good right now. Thanks for coming today. And some people came from a long ways away. We're happy to see you here this year. Um, my name is Tom Johnson. This is Deborah Johnson, my wife. And this is the most recent member of our family, Storm. And we'll go through a little bit about the history with Storm as we get into the presentation. But hopefully we can share our experience about service animals, and it can provide some value for your particular situation or family. Yes, and we are in the CTX realm of leukodystrophies. Deborah is a patient. I'm a caregiver. Our daughter is a patient. So we do not work for canine companions. I guess that's our disclosure. We don't work for them. We've just been a recipient placed with an animal from them. Okay, so I guess first, what is a service dog? According to the ADA, a service dog is defined as a dog trained in specific tasks to assist a person with a disability. And so it is protected under federal law in the United States. And that there are some differences between service animals and other types of animals who may be emotional support animals. Service animals, once they reach that level of, I guess, qualification, they are actually protected under federal law. That does not necessarily apply to some of the other types of support animals. So for example, he can come with us into hotels, pretty much any public place. He can fly with us on an airplane. We can't be charged extra for things like that. There are some challenges with doing those things, but it is protected under federal law. And if you have questions, feel free. Hopefully this can be a little bit interactive, so feel free to just ask a question at any time. So there are several ways to actually get a service dog. The first way is to personally train a dog. For example, if you already have a dog, and I've spoken with a couple of families already here at the conference who have a dog that they would like to or are planning to train as a service animal. We are not experts in that. We didn't go through that process. But there is an organization, an accreditation organization for service dogs. It's called Assistance Dogs International. It's assistancedogsinternational.org is the website. And they have member companies who basically run their organizations to meet the standards of that accreditation organization. Canine Companions, which is the organization we worked through, is a member company of Service Dogs International. And they do have, if you can search by area, and they will actually list all their member companies, and a few of those will actually say that they'll consider training personal animals. So that could be a resource if anyone is interested in looking down that road. Private or professional training can be pretty expensive. We've seen estimates that it ranges from $15,000 to $50,000 to get a dog fully trained. There are also nonprofits, and this is the kind of the path that we took, where all the professional training is done. At least in the case of Canine Companions, all of their funding comes from donation or other sources as a nonprofit, and the animals are actually placed with recipients free of charge. You do have other expenses. You have to pay for the veterinary care, the food, the regular dog stuff, but all of the training is actually included in their program, so free of charge at that point. And we'll go through more detail about what kind of training is included there. Again, we're just here with the perspective of having worked with one specific organization, Canine Companions. There are a lot of them out there. I'm sure there are some other great organizations out there as well. We've been very impressed with Canine Companions. They were founded almost 50 years ago, and basically their mission is to help place service animals with people with disabilities to help improve the quality of their lives. There are a lot of different types of disabilities or people with disabilities who have been served by canine companions animals. I'm not going to go through and read the entire list, but it's a broad spectrum of classes of disability where animals can actually help significantly.
In the leukodystrophy kind of category as well. I know initially when we started looking, I wasn't sure if I would be a good fit or if I would be a good candidate for it. So we put this in, sorry, louder. We put this in to show that they do serve a lot of neurological disorders.
Canine companions, the way they're organized, they have 6 regional service centers. We live in North Carolina, so we are associated with their Orlando training facility. We've been there a couple of times now. They actually breed their puppies at their headquarters in Santa Rosa, California. They have over 800 puppies born every year, and they have a specific breeding program to end up with dogs that are well suited to being service animals. The whole process is really interesting, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go through here. But they have done a lot of placements. In the history of the organization, they've placed over 7,500 service animals, and they have 270 employees, so it's a pretty good-sized organization. And it just seems to be very well supported. There's also a lot of volunteer and community support with canine companions, and we've been impressed with their organization. Puppy raisers also are some of the volunteers. We'll get into that here in just a moment. So their program, after the breeding program, they have those animals then go to puppy raisers. And in Storm's case, I guess I'll go in, we have the specifics, a slide on Storm in a bit, so I'll keep it generic here. But basically they have volunteers who raise puppies, and we actually we were on a trip across the country in February, and we stayed at a hotel, and they said, canine companions, we've been puppy raisers for them. This, I think, was in Wyoming or something like that. So they are across the country with a lot of volunteers participating in this program. They raise the puppies for 18 months, and their job is basically to teach these puppies kind of the basic obedience, behavior, socialization, kind of the simpler commands or the more basic commands. They also have different programs. There are 14 prisons that have puppy raising programs for canine companions. There are also 18 college programs where they have students volunteering and raising puppies. Storm grew up on the University of Central Florida campus as an academic dog, I suppose, and he did great. He got lots of socialization in that environment. After that first 18 months of puppy raising, they then go to one of the 6 training centers, and at that training center, they spend from 4 to 9 months and basically get professional training. So they're paired with a trainer, and a trainer may have 8 to 10 dogs in their string, they call it. And that trainer focuses on these 8 to 10 dogs and works on training them with the more advanced commands. And then they, over time, about half of the dogs who are bred into the program will not make it all the way to graduation as a service animal. There are all kinds of tests that they have to pass, and maybe it's just a personality characteristic. Maybe it's something where they just aren't learning the commands, the right types of commands. There could be different things, but about half of the animals don't make it to graduation. They go on to other happy lives in other ways, but then about half the animals do make it, and they actually graduate as a part of a service team. Go ahead.
Adding one thing to that, the animals that don't graduate, some become therapy dogs that are the dogs that can go into the hospitals and visit patients, but they don't have service dog qualifications, so they're not allowed everywhere, only where businesses approve. Some of them are just readopted as pets by their puppy raiser. So it's not uncommon for that circle to happen in certain cases. One of the dogs that we saw when I was being matched, he ended up going back to his puppy raiser because he had a GI issue and he just was getting sick more regularly, and it was just the stress of the work was too much for him. We also saw puppies the day they were turned in for professional training, and they had to see a cat and not chase it. They had a guy dressed up in a yellow raincoat with a cane with his hood up, and he was yelling at the dogs, and they had to not run away or get aggressive. So there are many different things that they test them at to see if they'll be okay in public, in a situation that you won't necessarily expect, but you don't want your dog to suddenly bite somebody because they were yelling at it, for example.
Just the one test. So, and they do learn up to 45 commands. So it's pretty impressive, the types of things that they can do. And every dog has their strengths and weaknesses. They do better in some areas and maybe not quite as well in other areas, which is what leads to, during team training, which is that third phase, the match. We basically went down to Orlando and spent 10 days. Normally it's 2 weeks, but we were the first class they had coming through right after COVID. They had been kind of shut down on campus for a while. So we were there for 10 days, and it was on site. They actually had dorm rooms, so we stayed in a dorm room on site. Yeah. And basically each individual who's going to be matched works with multiple dogs. And then the trainers try to see where is the best fit in terms of the needs, the personalities, etc., between the person and the animal. And then within the next 4 to 5 days, they actually reach some opinions as to who might be the best matches between, the dogs and the people. And then we also have, in addition to a lot of studying leading up to this so that the people can be trained and not ruin these highly trained dogs, we had a lot of learning as well as handlers. And I'm not officially a handler. Deborah was the one who was placed with Storm for Canine Companions, so they are the team. But there are also other types of teams, skilled companion teams, where maybe it's an adult with a child with disabilities, where the adult is the handler, the child is the recipient, and the dog works with that team to provide services. Or it could be 2 adults and a child, or an adult and another adult with disabilities. So it varies. So, okay, so what can a service dog do for children? There are all kinds of things that they are trained to do. One is helping with physical tasks. They can work with a child to help to redirect certain behaviors that may be happening. They can also provide deep calming pressure. That's not just for children, but for adults as well. And that can be very soothing for a lot of people with a lot of different conditions. There are all kinds of skill games that can be done to help children with gross motor skills. I don't know what all those games are. We didn't kind of go through that children's track. So we're not really experts in this area, but there are all kinds of things skills that they can provide, or games that they can teach to be done that will actually help with the child's development in terms of gross motor skills. Speech is one thing that can be worked on through giving commands, and Storm is actually the dog you see in I think 4 of these 6 photos here. So he's been around a lot of kids, and also socialization or social skills. Just that relationship between a dog and a human is great. So. For adults, there can be some of the same things, but they can also help with propelling a wheelchair. They have tug straps that you can put on drawers, so they can help to open drawers and then close drawers again. They can open grocery doors, which Storm does for Deborah at times. They can help with sensing sounds to alert their person that something is coming, like maybe an ambulance is coming behind them when they're driving. So they can be trained to alert people, turning on and off light switches. For Deborah, one of the big things is picking up dropped items. Do you want to go ahead with Storm will get some work in here. That this is his favorite game, and he's highly kibble motivated. He loves doing that for food. They can also be trained for people with PTSD, like helping to create space behind someone, interrupt nightmares, assisting with physical tasks. There are lots of things that they can do. So now on to our specific experience. You may be wondering about the name Storm V. So the way it works in the puppy breeding program is every litter gets a letter. He was in the S litter, and so every puppy in that litter received an S name. But they've had enough puppies that they ran out of names, so Storm is the 5th Storm that's come through their program. So he's Storm 5. That's where the name comes from. So, like I said, he was born in Santa Rosa, California, 2019, raised on the UCF campus in Florida. Then, at 18 months, went to Orlando to their training center. Liv, up here, was Storm's puppy raiser. She was a student at UCF and did a great job with Storm. When he went to Orlando, Robin there was his trainer. That's the string of dogs I mentioned earlier, where she had 10 dogs that she was training. And Storm is one of them in there, I think just to her right. And Robin is the person that we actually worked with during team training, and she helped to pair and match Storm with Deborah, as well as the other people that were there. And then Storm came to our family about 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago. He just turned 4. And he's been a happy member of our family, and we've been happy to have him ever since.
And Liv, our puppy raiser, she now works for Make-A-Wish Foundation as a photographer in the Orlando area, and she just got her 2nd puppy to raise. So she's now raising another puppy. Happens to be a black lab this time, named Chief.
Okay, so what does Storm do? So we have a few videos here. I don't think the audio is set up to be heard very well, but they're not long videos. They're just short little clips. So I'll try to turn up the volume, and hopefully this can be heard. If we have feedback, then we are getting feedback. All right. Is it playing?
Hit it and then race to the door that's opening. that we taught him, and I'm not, there we go. One of the things that we taught him was to find Tom, because if I'm upstairs and he's down in his wood shop, that was a problem. If I needed to get a hold of him, I tend to fall. So one of the commands we worked on training, not that Canine Companions taught, but that we taught using the basic steps, was to find Tom, where, don't do it now, he would bark, run, and find Tom, bark at him, and then Tom would ask him where I am, and he'd lead back to me. So that's been one of our personally trained, yeah, I know, yeah, you know what you're supposed to do. So he knows that he's supposed to do that, which helps me in case I don't have my phone on me, or he doesn't answer his or has it silenced.
And you can see that he does get along well with cats as well. He does have commands for jumping up onto things with either two paws or all four paws, and then a separate
I know.
and then a separate one for getting off those things. So there are actually real commands that are used
So that was
in the sequence here.
a let go, a jump, a sit, and then off. In sequence with that. On that. That's a visit. Nice visit. On that.
That all of these service dogs are still dogs, and they like chew toys. During the training that we received that we found really interesting about dogs, because there's a lot about dogs that we didn't know, and we've had pet dogs before, and I grew up with pet dogs, but these were some things we really didn't know. So dogs are distracted by most things. Everyone's familiar with the squirrel sort of thing. Same thing with dogs. Movement is what creates that distraction. Odor. Dogs' noses are really amazing. They can smell something like 100,000 times better than we can. I've heard one analogy is they could sense the equivalent of a half teaspoon of sugar in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So kind of like a shark, I guess, sensing blood in the ocean. Dogs can sense just incredibly well with their nose. And they get very distracted by that. He actually does get distracted by that fairly often. Sound, clearly. Their ears are also very good. And touch. Like if someone comes up behind them and touches them, it can startle them. There are lots of distractions, but they really are distracted by a lot of different things. So the training is very important, and the repetition and the consistency so that they know how to behave.
To turn green. And then the other thing I wanted to mention for people with service dogs, and I know it's been a little bit of a challenge with all the children, is you don't touch a service dog while they're working. So if you see a service dog with their vest on, you can ask, may I pet your dog? Some people don't want you to ask, and usually there'll be a patch on their vest or on their harness saying, please don't touch, please don't ask to touch. I usually try to, yeah, I see a lot of parents telling their children, oh, it's a service dog, don't touch it. But it does sometimes scare them, and it can throw them into a bit of a frenzy. I know Storm got a little bit nervous when we were coming through the lobby, and 3 kids jumped on him all at once from behind, and he didn't see him coming, and so he jumped and ran ahead of me, and that threw my wheelchair off, and it was like, okay, we got to catch things. So, just knowing and helping to educate others about service dogs. So just a comment there.
Animal dogs come with a lot of responsibility, and especially service dogs come with a lot of responsibility. For example, these are the things that they told us in the team training, and we have a whole handbook explaining these things. It's beyond where I had ever experienced with pets. And we're pretty good about most of this. Feeding, obviously, we do that twice a day. Toileting, we always keep him on leash for that. For lots of reasons. Part of it is training, and part of it is it keeps the yard clean. So, but it is more work to go out and do that.
And there is
frequently.
a command for it. Hurry, don't do it, is the command to toilet on command. So every time we take them out and bring them to an area, we sit before he goes into the toileting area, and then he goes in, and the command is hurry. So you're not sitting there, in front of a restaurant saying, go potty, go potty. It's a more subtle command of just hurry. So easier to use.
And obviously they need exercise. The brushing is one thing where he sheds a lot. About every second or third day, it's like we take a whole nother dog's worth of fur off of him. So there is a lot of shedding, especially with labs. He's a golden lab. And then teeth brushing. We've found a shortcut on this, but you're supposed to brush his teeth, but we found a nice toy that we can put some enzymatic toothpaste in, and he loves it, and he chews on it twice a day. So that's his toothbrushing, and his teeth stay actually really, really clean. So it's working. It's poultry flavored toothpaste. I don't think that they make that for people. Yeah. Weekly, he gets his podicure. This is one of the more challenging things for us because there is some effort involved, but it's trimming his nails, and we use a rotary tool, a Dremel-like tool. He doesn't like the clipper one, and we decided the Dremel worked better, at least in his case. And then Topher, if none of you have ever heard that terminology before, it's a real thing. It's the fur that grows between their toes, and you want to clip it so that they don't slip, so their pads are actually touching the ground. Yeah, so that's a weekly thing, and also cleaning his ears, because dogs with ears that are floppy can tend to get ear infections if you don't keep them taken care of. And then monthly gets heartworm prevention, flea, tick, mosquito, and then also the bath. And we do that in a shower. He gets a shower. So, any questions? Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. We'll send. Yeah. We'll email the slides to you also if you like. You're welcome. Okay, so the application process, it isn't a quick process. Canine Companions and any other nonprofit or organization, they'll have different considerations, like whether you have experience with dogs, do you really know what you're getting into, because it is a lot of responsibility, and it can change some of the things you do in life. Do you have a good place, a good environment for the animal, both in terms of the place, and is there an outside place where the dog can be? Can you afford to take care of a dog, adding the food bills, the vet bills, and other supplies? And then you also have to consider the kind of the pros and cons. There's a lot of responsibility, which can be a pro or a con, because it's more time, but sometimes it's a really healthy thing to have the responsibility for another being.
Yeah. For me, I get really tired with my disease, so Tom tends to take the early morning walk and the evening walk, and then I do all the middle of the day stuff. But it gets me up by 9 o'clock because that's breakfast time. So I have to feed him by 9, get him his dinner at 6, and then, any of the walks and taking him out during the middle of the day is kind of how we've split things up.
When breakfast and dinner are.
We have a grandfather clock. It's like he can count.
Yeah. So based on needs, pros and cons, it's something that you and the organization would both have to consider. So then after the initial, short application, and they say, yes, we think maybe there's a fit here. And this is, again, the Canine Companions process. It may be different with other organizations. Then there's an 18-page application where you fill out a lot of information. Your doctor fills information out, basically saying that, yes, this patient does have a disability that may benefit from a service animal. And then they review the application, and if they have decided that, yes, there still looks like there may be a good fit here, then they invite you to the service center for an in-person interview. And so we traveled to Orlando just to see if we were still in the process, and they let you do a little bit of handling to see, do you have enough, between your team, enough ability to actually handle a dog? And then after that in person, they decide whether or not they're going to invite you for one of the team trainings to be matched. So there are a lot of steps in the process. Overall, it took a year after the in-person interview, right?
Yeah, in total, it was just under 2 years between when we first applied and when we got matched.
And that's not counting the couple of years we were considering the concept before we applied.
Whether or not we'd apply.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'd encourage, if anybody does think about it, is apply. They'll tell you if you're not a good fit. And the first little application part is very short, very simple. And then you start the conversation, and at least you've started the process. And you can pull out at any point in time. So some people got to where they were at the top of the list to be matched, and they said, I need another 6 months, I'm going to be moving, or this is going on right now. And so they would just drop down a little bit, but keep coming back to the top of the list for matching. So, and the organization's working really hard to try to shorten that period of time. So like we asked if they wanted to send people for the conference, and they're like, we've got team trainings going on, we're doing matches, we're trying to get caught up from COVID, from all the way the list got longer. So
Yes. Okay, so then team training, we've already talked about this a little bit. 2 weeks in person at their facility. I don't think every facility has the dorm rooms, but they have hotels that most of them do. And this is just a picture of the room that we were in. Yeah. So it was a really good experience, and it kind of made it more of almost like a college dorm sort of experience with the other people who were being matched. So you got to know other people who are going through the same process as well.
yeah, and they have a hospital bed and basically all the accommodations you would need for somebody who was fully wheelchair bound in every room. So there was both a double bed and a hospital bed available.
And so this is where we got trained. Actually, she got trained, but I got to be there the whole time. So I got trained by osmosis. And then they were matched. And at the very end, she did have to pass. They had to pass a test according to Assistance Dogs International. That's that organization I mentioned earlier, the accreditation organization. And one of the things was going to a mall and doing different things in a mall, like, where there are other people around. And right. And then the other place was a Lowe's Home Improvement Center, where we went in and they would take a credit card and hand the credit card. The dog would hand the credit card over to the person at the counter, things like that. So it was an interesting process.
And I'll say it wasn't an actual credit card to check out. They used the kitchen area where they show kitchen countertops, and the trainer was behind. So they had to do an up and get back down. He was a little confused at the beginning and tried to fully jump up on the countertop. So it's interesting modulating. When I want him to jump, I need to be very excited. I'm like, okay, Storm, jump. And he'll jump up. Or if I want just an up with 2 legs, I'm like, Storm, up. Just up. Yeah. So it was, you're supposed to, and they have a command sequence that you always use. So you always say their name, then you give the command. So it's the name to get the attention. So he's looking at you. Then you give the command, Storm, stand. And let's see if you remember how to do this. Storm, stand. Now that's a sit. Storm, stand. Ready? Stand. Come on. Don't stand. He's like, I don't remember that one. We don't do that one very often. Okay, we'll do down. And then you either praise or correct with a don't. And it's just a short tug that just says don't. And that's the correction. And then they should look at you, and you may have to repeat it if they don't remember it. And we're supposed to do training on all of the different commands every week. So we haven't done stand in a while, so I probably shouldn't have used that one. But as an example, that's how they do it.
Yeah. So we have one more slide here. This is just one of the stories of someone who really benefited from a service animal that Canine Companions placed. So I'm not going to read through it, but there are a lot of success stories like this where the service animals have really made a positive impact on a lot of people's lives. So don't know if, okay, yeah, I'll leave that up, but that's all we had for today. Are there any questions? Oh, the bag, okay. Traveling with a service animal.
So one of the questions that we've had is, how hard is it to travel with a service dog? I was shocked the first time we traveled that Storm would fit in the little footwell right in front of me in the airplane. He's 63 pounds. He's one of the larger service dogs. Most of them were in the 40 to 50 pound range, so he's actually one of the bigger ones. And he can curl himself up in this tiny little ball and fit in where your, the little bit of luggage goes. And when we travel, that's all we bring with him for him. That has all of his supplies. It has, I don't know if you want to partly empty it, but show what's in there. So we have his kennel, which we use a pop-up kennel. It looks like one of those old laundry baskets, but they make them as kennels now with a zipper. We have his tug strap in case I need it. We have his food bowls in one pocket. We use the pop-up food bowls and water bowl, and they get down really small. We have his grooming supplies. We have his brush, a water bottle so that he can drink from, so the water can go in, and whatever he doesn't drink, there's a button to make it go back into the sealed part, so you don't end up with water in a bowl that you then have to try to dispose of somewhere. We found all sorts of fun things. No, just take the food thing. Yeah, his toy. Oh, his toothbrush. He's paying attention to you. He loves his toothbrush. This is something we found. They give a list of kind of what you'll generally need, but through experience, we do what's called overlanding. So we travel in a Forerunner with a rooftop tent and a refrigerator built in and a water system built in, and we'll camp for weeks. We needed to find ways of becoming very compressed, especially once we had to make room for him in it. So we had to figure out the smallest way of traveling, basically. The toys, whatever. And then we have a doggy first aid kit. And they gave us a list of what should go in that. And then his kibble goes in a bag that gets smaller. That's his food. Yeah. So, I mean, you're welcome to come see what we selected if anybody wants to. But other than that, are there questions? Amazon. I'll send you the links. Yes, I will do that. Oh, do you want to see it? Yes, yes. They give you the measurements of how big it is, and this is his smaller one, which we have two different sizes. We have one that's 4 feet long, 2.5 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide. That's huge. But this one, he fits in it. He can sleep comfortably in it, and that's and he'll just crawl in there and go to sleep. So, yes, yeah, it's his den. Yeah, his safe space. And he has a bigger one at home that's it's still soft-sided but not flimsy like that. It has a frame. And when a thunderstorm comes, he runs for it. He'll just go hide. Yes.
Some people prefer bed, we prefer the kennel, and he likes it. He never even comes into our bedroom, that's one of the spaces he doesn't come.
It's the safe space for our cats.
It's just a normal thing for him, is he just goes in there every night.
Yeah, if Tom's staying up late watching basketball or something, if Storm gets tired, he puts himself in the kennel. He's like, I'm ready. So in Canine Companions, the blue and gold braided leash is a handler recipient leash. And it's shorter than a full 6 foot leash so that we have more control. It also has Velcro so that it can fit on your wrist and Velcro down so that if you don't have a hold of it, he can't get away. So it's still attached. If gripping issues. So I usually put it around my wrist and kind of have it hooked just so I kind of control the distance to him. But other than that, she has some neat ones. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and hers can wrap around so that when she uses the rollator, you don't have to have a hand on. Yeah. Daniela, do you want to? Usually. He he has a 6 foot blue leash. Yeah.
My question is, like, are there different types of dogs that help with different things and needs they need? Does that make sense? Like, how would I know if I would need a storm versus a wet? You know what I mean?
Like what?
Breeds of dogs, like, do they all do similar things, or does it depend on what, you know,
Yeah. I would say there are different dogs that can do different things for sure. Canine Companions only does lab golden crosses or labs or goldens, and they can be black or yellow. Daniela was placed with a German Shepherd. Oh, Belgian Malinois. Sorry, Webb. And he can do balance work. So he has a special harness that can help with walking, where none of the canine companion dogs do that. So there are some differences. There are dogs that do, insulin alerts. Those are often smaller dogs. Hearing dogs, that is one thing that Canine Companions does do. So they do for deaf individuals or hard of hearing individuals, they'll do hearing alert dogs. They're usually the highest level trainable dogs. I would say they get pulled out first out of the strings to become specially trained for the hearing impaired. So it kind of depends on what you need. If it's mostly picking up stuff or turning on light switches, more of the physical type tasks, I would say, or comfort type, emotional comfort type tasks. The labs are great for that, but again, they don't do balance work. They can pull a manual wheelchair. That's about the extent of the physical. Daniela, do you want to say some things about your experience? Because I know you've had a great.
I'm from Colombia, so the process for me was different, and the dog that I got. So the dog that I got, sí, mi amor, está hablando de ti. He was given to me according, like, to my size, according to what I needed. So the professional trainers, they measured that I needed, for example, for walking, for balance. So he had to have a specific height. He needed to be strong, like in the muscles, but also in the bone. For example, I cannot have a German Shepherd that suffers a lot from the hips because I need to press on him for walking. It was very long for me as well, the process. Last year that I was here, I was already showing everyone pictures of him because I met him like a year and a half later after I started the process. My process began mostly through a psychologist. She evaluated me and she said, okay, you need this, you're able to do these things like responsibility, as Tom was talking. And then I came to the trainer. The trainer saw how I walk. The trainer saw my needs and everything, and they looked in the dogs they had. He was perfect. His personality matches a lot with mine. He's not so friendly. Well, at the beginning, now he is very friendly. But when he's working, when he have his harness, and I tell him the word to work in general, he only focuses on me. And he focuses a lot, and he follows a lot my mom as well, because she have been with me in the whole process. I didn't have the opportunity you have here of going to the facility and training with the team and with the dog. I went to the facility. He was given to me by the Air Force in Colombia. So I went to the Air Force several days to make the emotional attachment, and then he came with me to my house, and after like a month we started doing like training his abilities, his skills. He already had them, but he didn't know how to do it with me. So we had to train again in how to do it with me. Yeah, that was mostly my process. I have been with Web for 7 months already. This breed is like nervous, so I had a lot of fear of traveling with him in the plane. I thought he was gonna get afraid of everything, but he's really calm. Like Deborah just said, we got in the plane and he fell asleep just in my feet.
And I do think some individual dogs, maybe from any breed, could do certain things, but certain breeds temperament-wise may be more likely to be suited to different things. Yeah.
Like how many goals they get in each match? We're personally going to be training him to be with our daughter. We picked the day in the match because we thought we were the dogs before, so if she ever walks, we can pick her up and get ready to move on. We also plan on training him to pull her and sit and bark if someone's in her way. Do things like that. Unfortunately, since he's a bigger dog, we probably won't be fine with him.
I think we are approaching the end of our time. Are there any other last-minute questions?
I
Yeah.
have one more question. So you talked about the application process and and then, you know, once you move or whatever, you have to cross that bridge.
I would start the process.
Yeah.
I mean, people move all the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of fact of life. And
Are they income based or anything like
They're strictly need-based. Yeah, like not financial,
Yeah.
but functionally need-based, yes.
what do you do if someone challenges you in a public place?
This is our plant audience right here.
I mean, so I've had a bit of a challenge. Canine Companions recently rebranded. They were Canine Companions for Independence, and their logo had a person in a wheelchair with a dog. And it made it a lot easier to not be assumed, because sometimes I walk. I'm in the kind of, I can walk with a cane, or I can be in the wheelchair. Because they rebranded and the vests now only say Canine Companions, I've been challenged at doctors' offices. Oh, is that an emotional support companion? You know, and I'm like, no, he's actually my service dog. So we added the little service dog patches to make it a little more clear. But you explain, you know, he's my service dog. Technically, a place is only allowed to ask you 2 questions. Is the dog a service dog for an individual with a disability? Yes. And what can they do for you? He picks up items if I drop them. They cannot ask you to demonstrate. They cannot ask you the disability. They can ask you if it is, that basic definition at the beginning, is it a dog for an individual with, specifically for an individual with disability, and what specifically can they do for you? They cannot ask you for a certification because that's against the the rules. However, Canine Companions provides us a little card in case we are questioned. It has a picture of a team that this is Deborah Johnson and Storm 5, and our photo is on it, and we are a service dog team. And on the back, it gives the rules, the ADA rules, so we can, you know, speak to, yeah, there's a lot of options. And, oh, there was something else I was going to say, and I lost it. Nope, it's gone.
I didn't catch that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to wish all of you the best of luck with your journey. The medical stuff is often an odyssey, but the service animals are more of a journey, I think, where it can be very enjoyable. So good luck. Thank you.